Okay, so what are we gonna do next? Now that we have tidied up a little bit and apply some design patterns a little bit and had some structure with clean architecture, I say let's go back to the UI and work on the interaction. I'd open this window a little bit bigger. We're building interfaces. Just a note, just a little bit of thoughts here. So as developers, software engineer, we kind of focus very much on the code and the quality of the code, how to structure things internally. That's all good, but especially for front-end developers, we are building user interfaces and these need to be used by users. So the focus in reality is producing like a high quality usable interface, right? So in this case, the goal was to create a selectable ring of nodes here, and we need to kind of select one of these and then show some information on the right panel. Remember the kind of Figma template that I built on the sand? So we have a ring of elements, then we select one, we display some information, and we will have more items here on the list. But now let's focus on the first part. How about we work on the selection of the node? So we need to have a way for the interface to highlight that the node has been selected somehow. So I was thinking about we go over a node and that would be the selection, and we kind of display the outer ring of this node with a different color. So let's do that, but we will have two goals. Goal number one is to have a display the feedback of the user selection, and number two is build the code for how to select a node, which means we will have to have a little piece of state where to have the selected node in memory. We need to memorize the selected node so that we can reuse it anywhere else. We just don't want to have a display feedback. We also want to have a functionality which stores effectively the selected node. So let's do that. Okay, so remember we had this node context. I just make the window small so you can see the code. So remember we had this node context. We were saving the list of the Wi-Fi nodes, right? So how about we create a little piece of state in here with the selected node. So we're gonna say const selected. Oh my god, he knows. Selected node, and then set selected node is gonna be a use state of Wi-Fi or null. Let's make it empty. Let's forget about the null value. Okay, and then we are going to expose this set selected node here. Although he's complaining, which is good. We also have to export this. So here we need to update the type of the node context. In this case, we have selected node, Wi-Fi node, and then set selected node. Yes, so we have to update the interface with Wi-Fi, with selected node, which would be a Wi-Fi node undefined, and then the function, which would be defined as void function. But then we also have to initialize this stuff here when we do the create context. So we would have selected node as undefined and then with an empty function. So here We don't have the error anymore. Good. So now let's just try to use it in the ring node. We had already, remember, a no mouse enter little function which was console log in the circle. Let's see if it's still working. So we go in here. Where did the window go? There, console. Yes, it's it there. Perfect. So what are we gonna do? We have to pull information. We have to pull the bits of state of the set selected node so that we can use it in there. So here, basically, we have to use the context. Okay. So we would have const and then selected node, set selected node, use context. Yeah, that's right. Let's add all this stuff. Okay, so you guys know how contexts work. We are basically injecting, is a sort of dependency injection. We are pulling from the global, from the context, which is wrapping all the nodes inside the components. We can use directly the node and set select node. So back in the days, we used to prop drill all this stuff and pass function around, which was crazy. With context, we can bypass the whole hierarchy and directly use them inside here, which is pretty cool. And in the context of, no puns intended, in the context of clean architecture, contexts should be considered part of the infrastructure layer. So they have to be on an outer part of the layer. So this is actually part of the presentation for us. Okay, so let's use it. So we have the set selected node. We are going to use it here when we enter the mouse. When the mouse enters the node, we are going to set the current node which was passed from outside. Got it? So we call this method, which is then it will end up into this context, and practically we are setting this variable state in here. It's like a shortcut. Then, well, let's see if we broke something. Looks okay, but to prove it's working, we can console log it like here. CG, let's say selected node like that. Maybe let's add some icons to make it more fun. How about surfers? Okay, there is something. We just see the object, obviously. Well, we might need to print something more useful, like the name. Was that the BSS ID? I don't remember. BSS ID. Of course, there's the other one. SSID. I guess I'm a little bit of a noob engineer in terms of networks. Okay, so the SSID we can see. Let's enlarge it. Okay, so what's going on? Let's refresh. When I enter the node, for example, I've entered this one, Wi-Fi 5E7D, blah, blah. We got it printed here. And then when we enter Vodafone, which is one of my neighbor, we get Vodafone 5G, blah, blah, blah. So that's cool. It means that we are selecting the node here. When the mouse enter, we are passing the node. The node goes all the way through the context, and the context sets that inside its use state. You might ask, why are we doing this circle? Why are we not selecting the damn node here, and that's it, right? And have a use state. Well, the whole point of context is to have an information which will be available to potentially other React components, and we will, because when we will build the this part on the right, where we will display the information of the node, we want to have somewhere all the information about the node saved. We don't want to send through, do some crazy stuff from here to the next, to do some crazy communication in between components. So we are using effectively context. So awesome, right? All right, next step so would be to start thinking about how to display the fact that a node has been selected. So we need to work on our SCSS and React classes as well. So what we're going to do is basically, I just redo this part I prepared first. We wrap the circle and text with a G, G tag for the SVG, like a container. I'm not sure, to be honest, what does it do, the G thing, but once we do that, we can move the code for the event, for the React event in there, so that we detect not just on the single circle, but on the whole element. So we set the selected node in there. Let's see if it's working. It should, as before, yes. It's working as before. And then we do something like this. We create a variable here called isSelected. And what we're going to do is just compare the SSID of the current node passed in the, as a prop with the selected node of the context. So basically we're saying, is this the node, the selected one? So now we have this variable that we can use. And for example, we can do something like this. The class name will be ring node. So just a normal class that then we can use here on the CSS. And then we would add selected as additional class. So we can target basically the selected with the container, CSS container. So let's see if it's working. Of course, we need to prove it. So we have all the G. We can see this one is selected, but the other not. And when we go over the other, boom, this one becomes selected. The order is probably different from what you expect, but this one is this one in the middle. Now you see it rotates, so perfect. That's what we wanted. Now next step would be to start obviously styling this thing. The user will not look into the code and look for the selected CSS. What we want to do is start moving or creating the AI Git what's the name? Copilot was suggesting insane amount of stuff. So now let's check if it's working. Border, good old border red. Okay, so you have to hook the CSS classes. I moved the CSS here so that we can see better. I was just experimenting a little bit. What we want to do, it's quite simple in the end. I'm going to add a class here for this outer circle. We call it ring border. And then we would add the fill as a CSS property. I don't know what this node.fill is, but let's do class name and call it ring, not capital, we don't want to scream at him, ring border, like that. And let's get rid of the fill over there and have something like, you guys think, pink, be green, so we can see better. Save it, but then we also have to delete these. Dracaris. Cool. Now it's green. I don't know if you can see it. The border is green. Fantastic. So what do we want to do? We want to basically add another selector in the CSS, which will grab the selected one, and then we can simply change the color of the node. So here I'm gonna do, just enlarge it a little bit, ring node selected. When both classes are there, we are going to color the ring border as maybe orange. Let's get rid of these, and also let's make the unselected one like gray or black. Okay, so it's working. Let's open this up a little bit. Awesome. So when we go over, it gets orange. It means it's selected. When it goes away, it's unselected. Boom, boom, boom. Fantastic. One minor detail could be to add pointer, cursor equal pointer here. Save it, so that just means that the cursor become a hand. It's a little bit more user-friendly. The other thing I don't like much is this fill. If we can bring anything on the CSS, and CSS really, we should do it. So let's set a class name for this one. Let's call it ring core. Why did I call this ring? I think they should be called nodes. Ring node border. Yeah, ring node border, ring node core. Save it. Okay, still working. Now we want the core to be not red, maybe something else. White. Let's say black for now. And let's remove the fill here. Okay, colors are horrible, but it works. So what we did was moving all the things from here, because it's better to move all the styling away from the component itself. Real components should just contain like structure, a little bit of if logic, but not more than that, and the rest should be styling here and the logic in the context or use cases. So lean and clean. We don't want, when we see a lot of logic in the components, it means something needs to be redone or refactor for sure. Okay, so let's say put this one here for a while. Let's move on. Okay, let's clean some code. Let's remove this console log. Nice. So I think next step would be to build in the other part of the interface, like the right and the bottom part. When we go over one of this network, here we want to display the additional information of the Wi-Fi So for example, say encryption, SID, signal strength, I would say here. And then ideally we would have on the bottom part the list of the devices. Of course, we are emulating the fact that we know that which devices are connected to the Wi-Fi network. In reality, if we're not a super mega hacker, we would have access to the devices just on our own network. And then once we select the device, we get an additional information here. So that's pretty interesting to be done. Let's start from adding the information, displaying the information of the Wi-Fi network here. Okay. Probably at this point, we want to create a container, like a dashboard container for all these elements, like a wrapper, right? So let's do it. Components, new file. Let's call it dashboard. tsx. Let's call it dashboard. And let's add it in the app. Let's also start adding the dashboard as CSS, of course, and import it. Import. Good job, you know it. Let's add it here. You see, one interesting thing is that, talking about the context, the provider will start providing all the information about the nodes from whichever element we will add inside. So we don't need to pass anything really, because the dashboard itself will be able to pull the nodes and whatever we are exposing in that context. This was just a note. So dashboard, we have it here, it's working. What we want to do really is to move this ring into the dashboard. So let's set it here. Oops, let's make this one smaller so you guys can see the code. How about this? Dashboard, let's move the ring. Need to import it. Some frameworks, they have auto import like Next, which is kind of nice. Now it's repeated, you can see. Just because I didn't save. Yeah. Okay, cool. So the node provider is providing the dashboard. Dashboard has the ring. And then let's think about adding a new component, which would be what we have here on the right. Let's call it node detail, or node detail works, or Wi-Fi detail if we want to go more specific to the domain. Let's do node detail works. Stay a little bit generic. Node detail. I'm gonna create straight away CSS. Rough CE didn't work. Oh, I'm in the CSS. Dope. Cool. Okay, we got the node detail, and then we add the node detail here. Node detail. We got it. Wunderbar. Okay, let's leave it there at the moment. So what do we do now? Let's forget about the structuring the page for a minute. Let's focus instead on trying to pull the data and display it so that you guys can see how the context thing works. Let's clean this thing. This one I would say presentation. Presentation, I call it components. No. Yeah. I should have automated somehow, but what we really want is to try to use as much as possible this syntax instead of, using the dot dot. Because if we move it one day, we can repoint the presentation to whatever place we are going to put it. Okay. So not detail, we need to use the context same way as we did in the ring node itself. So we can copy and paste it literally. Import all this stuff and then use it. So we can say set a little fragment and then something like h2 good old HTML, right? And then a div, and then inside here, let's say selected node. He's suggesting end. That works because if nothing is selected, we're not going to display anything. Or probably we should display, node not selected, something like that. Okay, he's suggesting set a node. This works. Yes, he knows everything. But see, this is the interesting thing. Using a TypeScript, a typed language, gives us a disadvantage while coding and having a little bit of AI because he knows the type, so he can, I don't know exactly how internally, but he knows the context of the types that we're using. So TypeScript for the win. Here I messed up, of course, a little bit the syntax. Let me double check. This is interesting. I want to share this. What happened? He's saying that RSSI does not exist. So it's exactly the opposite of what I said. He is thinking, based on the fact that it's a Wi-Fi, that there is this property, right? That's what the auto-completion suggested, but that RSSI is not there. So we should always use auto-completion with a critical eye. And I think that what's happening under the hood is a copilot. He is aware just on the file that we're using probably and not the whole project. Other IDE like Cursor or whatever, they might have more of a knowledge of the context of the whole project. So my conclusion is that TypeScript and typing, the more information we are giving to the AI and to also other developers, of course, the better. So the more, or we need to find a balance, but in this case, it's kind of very important to have an interface which describes the type of the nodes, the better. But then, as in this example, he's throwing at us things that they are not compatible with our interface. He doesn't know. He just guessed. So a dot in this case is not the AI. It's the VS Code doing using the real types that we have there. while before when you're adding the tab, it's the auto completion from the AI. Okay, so cool. Let's use the good auto completion from VS Code. Then we want the band encryption signal strength. So I messed up a little bit with the closing divs and stuff. Now it's fixed. And look at that, it's working. I just enlarge it for you. So node details. Here we have the information of the selected node. When we change the node, it should change. Whoa, yes. Sexy little thing. It's changing the name and all the other information. I'm a little bit suspicious about the band, and this one I don't recall them being the same for everyone. So something must be checked. But for now, let's highlight the fact that what we have here, the selected node, what we are pulling here on the node details, it's the same selected node that was here on the ring node. So this is what I meant with there is a common context and we are sharing the information of which node has been selected. So sharing is caring, and this avoids a lot of duplication or crazy strategy to pass around the dynamic data for front-end applications. So context can be for sure used for this. Okay, so let's try to debug the band and encryption. I'd say let's take a look at the data, which is the use case for sure. So are they all 5G really? It looks like, let's say this one is 2, is that 2.5? Oh yeah, they are all the same. Encryption, open. This one is like that. We also should print signal strength. Do I need to reload it? That's interesting. Yeah, so it's working. It was just my data was not random enough. So for example, here we change this to 2.5. This is 5. This is open. Free Wi for everyone. So good, it's working. Let's add the signal strength as well. You see, this is not the best way of having a property because we have to assess it like that. It would work, but let's be the good guys and change the signal strength to maybe camel case. All right, it's hard to watch. So we need to do a little bit of refactor here. Let's do it. We need to change the domain, the untouchable domain. But it's software, of course. Sooner or later things needs to be changed. So signal strength, that would be a number. Now we're gonna break everything. Let's call it like that. Probably it's gonna break in a few places, or just here if you're lucky. Dot signal strength. No, that was an easy fix. Cool. Still working, all good. Nice. Now let's add a little bit of say that this one is a P. Actually, this is the name. So let's see it like that, but the properties, let's say that BSS ID. It would be a good practice to add a question mark because the property maybe it's not there. Append encryption signal strength. Good. All right. How about some label here with the middle mouse button? Do some magic and add a span class name. Let's call it info label. Right, and then let's close it, and then let's move this stuff. Okay, good. So we can target this stuff later. He's complaining about the data itself, of course. Okay. One thing we don't need here is the set selected node. We don't need to write. We are in read-only mode. Okay, good. Let's just highlight it a little bit. These labels. Let's call it. Let's target it and font weight bold. Let's import the CSS. Boom, now it's bolder. Fantastic. You guys see it's bolder. Okay, that's not too bad. We have a little bit of dynamic behavior, which is not too ugly. Also, we can see that when we load, nothing is there. We display, nothing is displayed. And that's because here we have select a node and then the syntax like that. We should add, I suppose we should always display something to the user and have a conditional. So let's do it. Okay, so conditional selected node, or he's suggesting this. Okay, it works, or not, no node selected. Yeah, cool. Okay, so we're going to create a grid for the dashboard here, and my recommendation is to use basically whatever the CSS is offering today. Like grid and flex are powerful enough to accommodate any type of layout. We don't need to use bootstrap or stuff like that anymore today. So let's just use plain CSS with grid. Let's create a container, dashboard container, and then let's wrap all the elements inside their own div. So for example, we can call it, because you know this trick, you can say div dot and then add the class name. Like for example, let's call it I don't know if I should use the name of the position, like first box, or the name of the content. I guess the more we are generic, the better. So let's call it first cell. And then second cell. It's not the best. I might think about something more a bit clever later. For now, let's slap them in like that. So here we are importing. Let's use it. Whoa, look at that. He's suggesting an interesting approach with flags. What about this? How about we say create a grid template for the dashboard? I suppose he's suggesting this. Create a responsive well, let's accept it for now, but also let's refine it, of course. So the first thing I want for this dashboard is to have a maximum width, max width, maybe 1,000. Okay. And then let's center it with a margin auto, the good old margin auto, and let's set a width 100%. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we got the CSS from ChatGPT. It's not super interesting to see every little line of this. It's just a grid, and here we have this one is the important part probably. We are achieving the responsiveness. You see, guys, this one is the mobile view, and then when we go the desktop, the node detail would appear at the right, and here goes at the bottom, like that. And so we have the media query here. So for the desktop, we have 2 columns, and up until here we have 1 column. Now that I look at it, this is not mobile first. I don't like it like this. It should be the other way around. So we want mobile CSS as the base, and then let's just swap these. Okay, I swapped them behind the scene. So this one, now it's what happens on the desktop, and by default we have 1 column template. So cool. This is pretty nice. We can see that I just enlarge it. This is using the grid template, which is pretty cool, as we have the grid gap. Back in the days, we had to do all this with crazy amount of CSS and testing for all devices, but today we can use that. So we fixed the dashboard. We have some kind of structure for the dashboard, which is what we wanted. Now let's think about the next step.